Okay, good morning and welcome to 2017 Combined Federal Campaign Manager and Coordinator Training. I do recommend as a housekeeping item that you all please mute your telephones during this training. We will have a Q&A at the end where you can unmute yourself and ask a question that may not have been answered as part of the training. If you don't have a mute function on your own phone, you should be able to do so by pressing *6, which should mute your phone. And when you need to unmute, you can press *6 again. In addition, if you are using your computer audio and speakers, you should see a little microphone icon on the panel, which you can use to mute your sound. This will also help to prevent feedback and any distractions. So let's go ahead and get started with today's training. 1 minute while I start the slideshow. Okay, so welcome to the CFC 2017. We're really excited. There is a lot of new things happening with the campaign this year. And I have to tell you up front that there are some questions that I don't yet know the answer to. So you may have some things come up that I'm not able to answer, but I will find those answers for you. That we just have a lot of new systems and processes in place, in particular when it comes to reporting of online pledges, which I'll talk about later on. The good news is we will get those reports, but they may not be as swift, at least in these early days. Well, CFC is still about supporting the causes that you care about, and now you can even volunteer through the CFC, which is a really bright spot, I think, for the new campaign. By the way, I will do my best to let you know when I'm moving along in the presentation, because I know that many of you are not able to follow along on screen, so I'll do my best to say, moving to the next slide. Right now we're on slide 2, moving to slide 3. This is our training agenda today. We're going to start with CFC 101, give you a little background about where the campaign's been and where it's headed now. And then we'll break the campaign down into your pre-campaign, active campaign, and post-campaign responsibilities as a campaign manager / CFC coordinator or key worker. And then at the end, we'll have the opportunity for Q&A. So as we're going through the presentation, I encourage you to take notes and jot down any questions that you have. Some of those may be answered during the course of the presentation itself, but if not, at the end, I'll do my best to answer those questions with the understanding, of course, that there are a lot of new things going on, and I may not have ready answers that I always used to have in the past, but we will do our very best to get all your questions answered as best we can. So moving to the next slide. Okay, let's talk a little bit about the history and tradition of the CFC, what's new and what's changed. CFC's been around for 55 years now. It started in 1961 with an executive order by President Kennedy, and it has changed and evolved a little bit through the years to become the campaign we know it today. Moving to the next slide, you can see that as of 2016, more than $8.2 billion, that's billion with a B, has been contributed to many worthy nonprofit organizations by federal employees just like you. And I think what's truly remarkable about that is that these contributions are just coming one individual, generous federal employee at a time. We don't have any matching dollars or outside grants or anything like that. So just people giving generously of their means. Now you'll notice here at the bottom of this slide, on slide 6, that the campaign dates are a little different from what you're used to. We did intend to kick off by October 2nd. However, the charity list was not yet finalized, and now it has been finalized, and so we're ready to go ahead and launch the active solicitation period. But the good news is that we do have through January 12th of 2018 for pledges to be received. Now, this does not mean that your federal agency needs to be soliciting throughout this entire period. Most federal agencies are going to choose a shorter window of time between now and January 12th to run their active solicitation period. But you can accept pledges all the way up through the 12th of January, and the online pledging system will be open through midnight of that date. Moving to the next slide. How the CFC works is basically the same, but I'll walk you through it anyway. You get to decide as a donor how you want to donate. You can do so online, and you still can use the paper pledge form to make a contribution. Using either of those two methods, you choose which nonprofit organization or organizations you wish to support, and you can choose your payment method. You can give by payroll deduction, which is probably our most popular method. You can also give by personal check, which you would need to use a paper pledge form to do, or you can give by credit card, and new this year, you can also sign up to do a bank e-check. In other words, a draft of your checking account. So we'll show you how those options work. And then after you give, charities that you support receive those funds throughout the year as they come in. And of course, ultimately, people in need are given the help and hope that we want to give them through CFC. So there are some new things with the campaign this year. And the first one is that there's a brand new giving portal for online giving. Gone are the days when we have 3 different systems, MyPay, Employee Express, and CFC Nexus. And now OPM has launched a new giving portal, which you can find at cfcgiving.opm.gov. And I'll show you, walk you through it later on in the presentation. Another thing that's brand new to the CFC this year is that for the first time, we can accept volunteer time as well as money. So any federal employee that wants to give money, that's great. If they also wish to volunteer hours on their pledge form or on their online pledge form, they can do so, as long as the charity has specified as part of their CFC application that they can accept volunteer hours. So that's a wonderful thing. And you can give volunteer time without giving money if you wish. So as you're out and campaigning and talking to people, please remind them that volunteering is an option in addition to giving money. And then finally, we're really excited that federal retirees can now give through CFC, and they can do so through their retirement annuity pay. They have to do it using the online system, but it's there and available. Now you might be wondering, how do I contact federal retirees? Well, the good news is that's not actually something that you're tasked with doing. If you do know retirees in the area from the federal government who would like to give, we do hope that you'll spread the word, but it's not something that you have to do to reach out to those retirees. That'll primarily come through OPM and their channels. But we wanted to let you know it's available. Now, some things that have been in the CFC, moving to slide 9, are no more. And the biggest one is that we can no longer accept cash contributions through the CFC. I am getting a little bit of an echo, so if you haven't yet muted your telephone or your computer, I would encourage you to do that through the *6 function or just your own phone's mute function. Thank you. So we can't accept cash anymore. We can accept a personal check. So if an employee wants to write a personal check and do so in conjunction with the paper pledge form, they're welcome to do that. In connection with no cash contributions, we can't have fundraising events specifically that, where you receive cash as part of that fundraising event. So things like bake sales and silent auctions or regular auctions, a lot of those things that we used to do to raise additional funds for the CFC, can no longer take place. So that does not mean you can't have events, and in fact, awareness and fun activities in association with the Combined Federal Campaign are encouraged, and we do have an event guide that I would be happy to share with you. Just contact me after the presentation. We'll also make it available on our website eventually. Undesignated pledges are also no longer accepted. Now, the vast majority of pledges that we received where the individual didn't actually specify which charity they wanted to give the money to, those came through our fundraising events anyway. So these things are really kind of interconnected here. But just know that you can't accept a pledge form where the employee doesn't actually specify which nonprofit they wish to give their money to. The structure of the CFC has also changed a little bit. Now, this isn't something that is going to affect you day to day in your campaigning, and I won't be testing you on this. But just for your information, OPM is still the regulatory committee, that government agency that oversees the campaign nationwide. But they've now contracted with one central campaign administrator, or CCA, which is now tasked with receiving all pledges for the campaign and processing them. So you no longer have to collect paper pledge forms and figure out where your federal payroll office is and mail them there. You're just going to send everything that you receive, at least all the paper contributions, will be sent to the central campaign administrator. And you'll do that through a pre-provided envelope that will provide for you, where you can put those pledges in the envelope, and it's already got the address for the central campaign administrator on it, and you simply mail it off. It's in Madison, Wisconsin, and they will take care of it from there. The LFCC, or Local Federal Coordinating Committee, is sort of like the local nonprofit executive board that oversees our campaign locally. So we're part of the Mountain States CFC, and our LFCC is comprised of volunteers from local federal agencies in the Mountain States region. And they're tasked with overseeing our campaign to make sure that we're in compliance with regulations, and they're overseeing our budget expenditures for the running of the campaign and so forth. And then finally, the outreach coordinator is new. It used to be that each CFC contracted with a local nonprofit organization to manage the incoming pledges and disperse them to charities. That is now all handled by the central campaign administrator. But the marketing and training and the logistics of the campaign is now handled by an outreach coordinator, which is also a government contract agency directly contracted to the Office of Personnel Management. So you'll see that with this new structure, things are a lot more streamlined. We used to have 140 campaigns last year, and now we have 35. And a lot of those zones have been condensed down and merged. So I'm moving to the next slide, number 11. Our local zone geography, and I have to apologize because this graphic is a little bit out of date. We were hoping to get a new one created, but it's not in yet. But the red territory is now the Mountain States CFC, except for this blue area here, which used to be the Rocky Mountain CFC, is now part of this greater red territory you see here. So the red used to be Intermountain CFC. This blue here was Rocky Mountain CFC. And this lower right-hand area has merged with Intermountain CFC. And we had an arm wrestle to determine what the name was, and it was a stalemate. So instead of Rocky Mountain or Intermountain, we went with Mountain States CFC. And together we have roughly 165,000 federal employees, well over 1,000 federal reporting units, and last year combined we raised a total of $5.1 billion. Moving to the next slide. So this is a question that you are probably likely to get as you're out talking to people about CFC. And that question is, well, why should I give through the CFC? Why not directly or some other way? And there are a lot of great reasons that people choose to give through the Combined Federal Campaign. One of those is that through CFC you can sign up for a payroll deduction allotment, which really makes it easy and convenient to give them a modest amount per paycheck that over the course of the year really adds up to a significant contribution to the nonprofits of your choice. So it makes budgeting a whole lot easier, and it's frankly, it's the way I choose to give. It's a fantastic means of supporting nonprofits. Of course, through CFC, you have multiple choices, not only in how you give, but in the sheer number of nonprofit organizations that participate in the campaign means that there's almost certainly something that matches your personal interests and passions. The CFC is also a regulated program, but in addition to being regulated by the government, all of the nonprofits that participate in the CFC go through an annual screening process. So you can rest assured that when you're giving to a charity in the CFC, that organization has been carefully scrutinized to make sure that they are on the IRS master file of bona fide nonprofits and that they meet other criteria specific to the CFC to give you, the donor, extra confidence in your contribution. One thing that people don't always consider when they're giving to nonprofits is they don't always retain full control of their personal information when they're giving directly. But through the CFC, you as a federal employee have the ability to closely control how much information is shared with the nonprofits you're giving to. You can remain completely anonymous. In fact, that's the default option. You have to check certain boxes on your online or paper pledge form to enable charities to know anything about you, your name or your gift amount or how to contact you. Many people like to do that because they like hearing from the nonprofits, but again, the choice is up to you. CFC is a convenient way to support multiple charities at the same time. So through one once-a-year program, you can sign up to support 2, 3, 4, a dozen or more nonprofits all at once. You don't have to write separate checks. You don't have to track separate giving amounts, and especially if you're deducting that on your taxes, it makes it really easy because it's one form that you'll go back and download and provide on your tax return. And what more convenient way could you have to deduct charitable gifts on your tax return? And then collectively, the power of our contributions together, as we've seen, has really added up in the past to make a huge difference, and we continue to raise millions upon millions of dollars each year for nonprofits. So it's a great way collectively to make a difference and also support the local goals of your federal agency in giving back. Moving on to the next slide. Our theme for 2017 is once again, show some love. We've simply gone from the light blue color to what we're calling the sunrise orange here. OPM likes to say because a new day is dawning over the CFC. But this is our campaign theme this year, and it's a dynamic and attractive and fun way to rally the troops, if you will. So we'll talk about some ways you can incorporate this as part of your campaign. Our messaging for the CFC is very simple, and that's just through the campaign you can give, you can volunteer your time and talent, and we also encourage everybody that participates to tell their own story, to share with others why they believe in the CFC, why they believe in the nonprofits and the causes that they personally want to support. And we'll be talking about ways that people can get involved and help share their story in that way. This is one example of a real federal employee who supports sports for people with disabilities. So because her brother has Down syndrome, she has found a great personal meaning in supporting nonprofits that provide recreational outlets for people like her brother. And the list of causes and nonprofits that you can support through CFC is really endless. We have a lot of these types of pictures and stories available for you. We're having a little bit of trouble with posting some of these to our website currently. We will get that straightened out. but I just wanted to show you that we have this website called Brand Folder, and here we have access to logos, campaign colors, pictures of many, many, many federal employees and the causes that they support through the CFC. I know you can't see this if you only have the slides, but you'll just have to imagine. I have got a lot of resources that I can share with you. Planning documents, design files, templates of posters. You can even use templates here to create your own poster with local pictures, and we can help you with that. So I'm just scrolling through the page here. All kinds of resources, including pre-scripted campaign emails and many ways, infographics, ways that you can get involved. So if there's anything that you don't have access to that you would like to see, chances are good that we have it here and that I can share it with you. So I'm moving back to the slides. Moving on to slide 16 now. This is basically our agenda for the rest of the presentation. We're going to talk about how you prepare for the campaign, and primarily that's what we're here doing today, is learning about the CFC, how it works, and how you can share that message with your colleagues. Then we're going to talk specifically about how you make the ask, ways to follow up, and the importance of recognizing everybody who participates in the campaign. And if that sounded a little bit too easy, we do have some recommended additional responsibilities here. And first and foremost, we recommend that you each, before you launch your campaign, take the time to make your own pledge so that you'll truly understand the process and you can help other people through it. You should keep your leadership team informed and involved at the office to help them understand what's happening, but also to help spread the word and be that support mechanism that you need to be successful. We do recommend that you participate in campaign events, that if possible, that you have a few events yourself, one or two, and again, we have an event planning guide that can help you do that. Even with the loss of fundraising events, there are things that you can do to make the campaign more interesting. We are more active than ever on social media, so we have a Facebook account, a Twitter account, we even have Instagram now, and we're very active, and we encourage you to tie into us, to like and share our messages, and get involved that way. And then finally, we have some national CFC promotional days. You'll probably be smiling to yourself as you see October 2nd has already passed, but kickoff day is really the day that you launch your campaign internally. So we have some messages for you to share as you get kicked off. November 2nd is Show Some Love Day, and that's a day when we're asking people to share the reasons why they support the CFC and specifically the causes that they support through the campaign. So we'll talk about ways that you can do that. November 28th is Giving Tuesday, which is not just a CFC day, it's a nationwide day when people are encouraged to, after Black Friday and Cyber Monday, when we're out spending money on ourselves, when we're encouraged to think about others and give back to the community. So we'll help spread that message on our social media channels on that day as well. And then finally, because we're also encouraging people to give time in addition to or in lieu of giving money, December 5th is International Volunteer Day, and that's the day when we'll be really pushing the idea of volunteerism through CFC. Okay, moving on to the next slide, introduction to our pre-campaign roles and responsibilities. So we encourage you to network with one another. Now that's not easy here on the phone, but just to make you aware, we just launched a new networking channel on our Facebook page for campaign managers. So I'm going to go here really quickly to Facebook. And since not everybody can follow along with what I'm doing on screen here, our Facebook page is facebook.com/mountainstatescfc. If you're following along, if you're going there now on your own computer, the first thing we'd ask you to do is to like our page and follow our posts, to like them, to share them, and to comment, because the more you do that, the more other people will see them. But we have just started a group here called the Mountain States CFC Campaign Managers Group. We just launched this yesterday, so there's not a lot of members yet, but it's an opportunity for you to share tips and best practices with each other. And we're also posting files to this page that you can download, and we just got started, so there's a whole lot more to come. This is another place you can go to get resources. Okay, I'm going back to the slides now. We also encourage you to view our new website, which is mountainstatescfc.org. Again, there's a place there where you can download materials. You can always click the donate button and get straight to the giving platform, and we'll be posting information about events and activities at that website. So that's another place for you to become familiar with. The next step in the campaign is to develop your internal plan for how you're going to go about publicizing the campaign, which it could include campaign events. But this second bullet here is really a key aspect of successful campaigning, and that is to make sure that your leadership team is on board and supportive of your plan. We have done research in the past that clearly indicates that the federal agencies who successfully engaged their agency leaders in being vocal and active in the campaign are the same agencies that have the most success. So we encourage you to make them a part of your team, at least to let them know what you're doing and to ask for their support. We do recommend that you set a campaign goal, and if you're wondering where to start, if you need your campaign history, for most of you, I'm able to provide that, so just contact me or contact your local area representative, and if you don't know who that is, I can certainly put you in touch with them. We have a different person for Montana, for Colorado, and Idaho, and I'm the main contact for Wyoming and for Utah, but I can put you in touch with anyone in your local area. Campaign supplies. If you haven't received them already, and I know many of you have not, those are coming, and you're always welcome to contact us, and we would like to know if you have specific quantities in mind, but we'll be going through the kind of materials that we have available for you. And again, the online pledging site is up and running right now. You can search for charities, you can pledge online, so everything that is needed to make a pledge is available at that website. And then, depending on the size of your federal agency, we recommend that you recruit a committee to help you with events and publicity. And that committees can be a great way where people come together and brainstorm fantastic ideas, and they could come up with ideas that you maybe haven't thought of that would really lend a spark to your campaign this year. Moving to the next slide. If I can get it to go, there we go. The next step is, again, depending on the size of your federal agency, is to get some key workers to help you reach out and make contact with everybody at your organization. I'll be mentioning this later, but truly, if you want to have success with the CFC, the key to success is personal contact. So if you have a lot of federal employees at your agency, then our rule of thumb or recommended ratio is to get one key worker for about every 25 to 50 employees. And we recognize that's not always possible, especially in very, very large organizations. But the closer you can come to that ratio, the easier it will be to make meaningful contact with everybody and engage them. You can use last year's team of key workers as your starting point. And then what you'll want to do next is to schedule and conduct a key worker training session using the information and the slides that you received here today. Moving to slide 22, it's time to start talking about what to do during the active campaign time. So I'm harping on this a lot, but again, having leadership involved is so key and crucial. If you're not lucky enough to have a very engaged and supportive leader, that doesn't mean your campaign is doomed. But the more you can do to engage the leaders at your agency, those who are or those who are looked up to and well respected, then the more successful you'll be. So invite them to be involved. We actually have a document called 10 Ways Federal Agency Managers Can Support the Campaign. And these are simple things that don't require a lot of time or direct involvement. So contact me for that information. And it's something that we'll be adding to our Facebook managers group and to our website. So throughout this presentation, we pause every now and then to talk about some tips that you can use to be more successful. And one of these tips kind of involves tips. So if you've ever been to a Cold Stone Creamery or a bar or someplace where they have a tip jar and they're accepting cash contributions for their services, you may notice that they'll never set out an empty jar at the beginning of the shift. They'll put their own cash into that jar if they have to, or keep some from the previous day, because psychologically people know that we're social creatures and we do what we see other people doing. How does this translate to the CFC? Well, when you launch your campaign on day one, our recommendation is that you don't launch at ground zero. So start with sort of a quiet pre-campaign where you and your key workers and maybe key members of your management team, or possibly people that you know are participants each and every year, you approach them, ask them to make their contribution. And then when you launch on day one, you can launch at 10, 15, 20% of your goal already and show people that this is something that that people are doing and that people are involved in. Along with that, we have a barometer poster that you can use to track your progress, and I'll talk about that more in just a moment. So it's time to talk a little bit about the nitty-gritty of pledging. On this next slide, we're on slide 25 for those of you following along. This is a screenshot of this year's paper pledge form. And the first thing you'll notice about this form is, as soon as you get a paper copy in your hands, is that it is no longer a triplicate where you've got a white, yellow, and pink or other colored copies. This year, it's a single form on printed. It does have a cover that is simply the top part of the page folded down over this. So you can photocopy or print this to your heart's content. You really cannot run out of this because it's so easy to photocopy or print it. One thing, though, along with just having one copy, to make certain of, is that when somebody comes to you and hands you a pledge form, that you ask them if they've already made their own personal copy. So they should photocopy it, the donor should photocopy it for their own personal records. And then you may even want to take a second photocopy for your personal records before you turn this into the Central Campaign Administrator, which again is here at P.O. Box 7820, Madison, Wisconsin. So, primarily the form is very similar to what you've seen in past years. We have extra space here in the middle for people to, especially if you're at a military organization, and you can really drill down into your specific office or unit. But the more information you can provide here, the better it is for reporting purposes. The Social Security number here in the middle right section is still required for anybody who wishes to use this form for a payroll deduction. If they're using it just to do a one-time personal check, then the Social Security number is not required. The way this form works is if you're giving by payroll, then you check the payroll box here in the middle, and then in this next section to the right where it says per deduction amount, you're going to put in how much you want to give every paycheck. So whether that's $1 would be the minimum, $5, $10, you decide. Any whole dollar amount can be entered into this box. And then depending on whether your CFC deductions come out once a month, for example, if you're with a military organization, you're drafted once a month. If you are with a civilian federal agency or the Postal Service, then it's a biweekly times per year. So let's say I give $5 per paycheck and I'm a civilian federal employee, so I'm biweekly, then my total amount, which I'll enter down here to the bottom right, would be $130. And above this is where I would split up that $130 amount among the different nonprofit organizations that I have chosen. So I select them by looking up the 5-digit CFC code, and I enter 1 digit of the 5 digits per box right here, and then breaking up that $130 fictitious example amount, then I would give a certain amount of this total annual amount to each of the nonprofits that I select. Now, one thing you'll notice that's new, just to the right here, are we have these other boxes where you can also pledge volunteer time. So the way you do that is simply put in a whole hour amount. So if you wanted to pledge 4 hours to this organization, then you would put the number 4 here, and 2 hours here, or however many hours total, then you would add those up. And then you as a key worker or campaign manager, when you receive this form, the thing that's most important to do is to verify that the totals here at the bottom do equal the sum of these boxes above, because you'd be surprised how many times people are going quickly and they don't do the math correctly. So first of all, make sure that the amount per paycheck here does indeed equal the total amount that should go here to the right, and then verify that they've broken this down and split it up evenly, not necessarily evenly, but that the sum of these boxes equals the total here. When it comes to volunteer hours, the way this works is a federal employee is going to pledge volunteer support to the agency, but it's not something that you or we or the government is going to police or make sure that they actually fulfill that pledge of volunteer time. It's simply a pledge of good faith between the volunteer and the nonprofits that they want to volunteer for. So they're really on their own when it comes to fulfilling that pledge of volunteer hours. Over here on the left-hand side is the authorizations box. This needs to be signed and dated to enable the payroll deduction, but also if they check this box that's in the lower left here, it says information release. By checking this box, I authorize the CFC to release my contact information and pledge amount to the charities designated above. So this is where you have control. If you wish the information that you provide up here to be released to the nonprofits that you specify here to the right, then you check this box. And if you wish to remain anonymous, then you leave it unchecked. Again, if your phone is not on mute, we encourage you to press *6 or mute your phone. Okay, moving on to the next slide. I'm on 26. Then you will collect these paper pledge forms, and you will fill out a summary sheet, which you can download from our website or our Facebook page, or I can email it to you. Again, we're having a little bit of trouble right now getting some of these items posted to our website. That's a long story, but we will provide them for you, and if all else fails, I'm able to email you the items you need. But there's a pledge summary report, which is simply a sheet of paper where you fill out how many people gave by paper form and the total of their contributions, and then you include that with the actual copies of the pledge form inside the pledge report envelope, which is then mailed here to P.O. Box 7820, Madison, Wisconsin. The pledge report envelope and the summary report form are only required for paper pledge forms. You do not need to include any information about online giving amounts on that form. Speaking of online giving, so this slide is simply a quick overview of how you go about making an online pledge. But what I want to do now is leave the slides for a moment. And if you're just following along on the phone, where I'm going now is cfcgiving.opm.gov. You can also reach it through our website, mountainstatecfc.org, by clicking the donate button. And another URL that works is opm.gov/showsomelovecfc, but it all takes you to this same website. So the first thing when you get to the new giving website is that you will click the sign up now button toward the right hand side of the page, because everybody this year will be registering account, as this is the first time that we're using the system. So when you sign up now, it will ask for your name and your workplace and your contact, especially your email address. It will ask you to select some security questions so that you can get back into your account should you forget your password. And then it will send you a confirmation code through email, and you will then need to use that code and click the button in the email and enter that code in order to launch your account for the first time. Now, what I have heard is that some federal agencies' firewalls are extremely strong and will block that confirmation code. So if that happens, check your junk mail or give it 24 hours. They often will show up. But if after 24 hours you still haven't seen it, then you can call the help desk. There's a contact us link here at the top right, but I'll also give you the number later on in the presentation. Now, since I've already registered here, I'm going to go ahead and put in my email address and my password. I'm going to click sign in. And this is the main area of the page. And of course, you'll see that featured prominently in the middle of the page is the Pledge Now button. Now, if I wanted to use the website just to look up my charities, but let's say I wanted to give them a paper pledge form, but I would like to use the search engine, then I can just come here to the top left of the page, and next to the CFC logo, it says Find a Charity with a little magnifying glass icon. I'll click on that, and it will take me to the same search engine that you'll find when you click the Pledge Now button. The only difference is that it will then not prompt you to go on and make a pledge. You can just find the 5-digit code of the charity you're looking for and then enter them on your pledge form. So I'm just going to go back to the main dashboard here, and I'm going to click Pledge Now. And here it takes me to the search engine. Now, I recommend that you as a coordinator spend some time here playing around with it, becoming familiar with how this search engine works. But in general, when I'm first starting out, I like to cast kind of a wide net by, let's just say I put in food bank here. And then if I were to click search for charities, it would pull up just about every food bank nonprofit in the CFC. Now, that might be a little bit too much. So over here on the right, I could say, well, right now I'm just looking for food banks in my local Mountain State zone. And if I wanted to get really specific, I could enter my zip code. But just remember that the more information you put in, then the smaller that net you're casting will be, and you kind of catch fewer nonprofits with that net, if you will. So I'm just going to leave it Mountain State CFC zone. I'm going to leave food bank here. And I could, if I wanted to, narrow down the categories, but I'm going to leave it just as is for now. And I'm going to click Search for Charities on the bottom right. And you'll notice that here in the Mountain States region, we have 9 different food banks. Utah Food Bank, we have Food Bank of the Rockies, which covers Colorado and Wyoming. We've got Montana Food Bank Network. So all kinds of options here. I'm going to go ahead, once I found the one I'm looking for, let's say it's Food Bank of the Rockies, I'm going to click the Add button. And then it gives you a little pop-up that says Charity Saved to Pledge Basket. If this is the only charity I'm looking for, I could check out, or I could click this Find More Charities, which would take me back up. I scroll back up to the search engine, and you'll notice in the top right in my basket that I've got the number 1 with the star around it, which shows me that I've got one nonprofit in my charity basket. So let's just do another search here, and I'm going to go ahead and type in diabetes in the search engine. I'll leave it to the, well, no, I'll just find all diabetes organizations by going outside of the Mountain State Zone. But you'll notice that here we've got 76 different nonprofits. So let's say that I'm looking for my local American Diabetes Association, or it might be one from an area where I used to live, which is why I didn't specify the Mountain State Zone. But I could have specified another zone or put in another zip code to narrow these results. But I'm going to just say, yes, I'm looking for this one in Alexandria, Virginia. So I'm going to add that one to my cart. And I could continue to find nonprofits here. There's so many different examples, but for now, I'm just going to go ahead and click checkout. Now, because when I registered, I not being a federal employee myself, I registered as a contractor. So I don't, at this point, have the option to make a payroll deduction gift, because that can only be for federal employees and retirees. But I do have other options here. Now, when you get to this part of the system, you will also have the payroll deduction option in addition to these 3 options, which I have here. So if I want to, I can give my bank account, and then a little pop-up comes up, and I put in my bank information, and then I can add my bank account, or I can do it by credit or debit card. Again, it would ask for my information. I would add that. Or I could click volunteer only, and then that goes away, and I would only put in volunteer hours. And then to the right here, once I've selected a method, let's say I'm giving my credit card, I could do a one-time gift. I did select card, right? Or a monthly. So I have the option to do a recurring credit card transaction every month if I wish, or I can do the same thing with my bank account. Or if I were a federal employee, I could specify the amount per paycheck, and then down here, the rest is basically the same. You've got the nonprofits you've selected here in your charity basket, and you can allocate to them based on percentage or by amount. So because I don't have a dollar amount in yet, because I didn't put in my my credit card information first, but if I do add a dollar amount and then come down here, oh sorry, that was monthly. I'm going to do a one-time. I'm going to put $130. Then down here, you'll notice that it gives an even amount. It defaults to an even amount to each charity, but you can adjust that. If you wanted to give, 100 to this organization, then it would take your remaining balance, which would be $30. And you'll notice the percentages changed here. So you can either do it by dollar amount, or you could manually change it. Let's say I want to give, 60% to this organization, then automatically it goes to 40% to the other one. To the right of this, you'll notice that you have the option to add volunteer hours. Now, not every nonprofit has specified that they wish to accept volunteer time, but you'll notice that 1 out of the 2 I selected here did. So I have the option then to put in, say, 16 volunteer hours in this organization. Now, you might be wondering if a federal employee can volunteer on company time, if you will. Well, the default answer is no, but some federal agencies do have an allotted number of hours per year that you can use for local volunteer service. So you can certainly use your CFC volunteer time as long as that is cleared with your federal agency, but anything above and beyond your allotted amount of work hours to volunteer would then have to be evenings and weekends, time that your own time that you use for volunteer. And then once again, you'll notice to the right here, I have the option of the information I want to share. especially when it comes to volunteer time, we encourage you to encourage others to go ahead and release their contact information, because otherwise then they will have to proactively contact the charity on their own to say, hey, I volunteered to you through CFC and I want to fulfill that pledge. Then when I'm done here, I can continue with my pledge. You'll notice that because I didn't actually enter credit card or banking information, it won't let me proceed. So to show you the rest, I'm just going to come back to the slides here, and I'm moving down through these screenshots. I'm now on, let me see here. Bear with me one second. So then it would, when I'm done with the pledge process, it asks me to share what kind of information I want to share with the charities that I'm giving to, or I could leave this blank and then just continue. And then it's going to give me a page that shows what I've signed up to do. So that it would provide the nonprofit names here, how much I'm giving to each of those nonprofits, whether or not I've pledged any volunteer hours. So this is your screen to review everything and make sure it all looks accurate to the total pledge amount. And then when everything looks good, you check the box here to the right that says confirm my 2017 pledge and then submit pledge. I'm on slide 4 if you're following along. And then to the next slide, what you'll see after that is a final volunteer screen that again shows your total amount, the charities you gave to, and how much. You'll notice here at the bottom is a link that says you have a thank you note from a charity. Some of our nonprofits have provided to the CFC thank you messages in advance, thanking you for your gift to them, and may provide more information about what they intend to do with your CFC contribution. One thing that I didn't mention as far as benefits of giving through CFC is how much charities really love the Combined Federal Campaign. For one thing, it gives them access to a large pool of employees in the federal environment that they wouldn't otherwise have access to. But another wonderful thing about the CFC is that our contributions to charities through CFC are what they call unrestricted. Many nonprofits, a lot of their income these days comes from private or government grants, and oftentimes those grants have strings attached that specify, hey, nonprofit, we're giving you this money, but we want you to use it for this particular cause or this particular thing that we say. And with CFC, charities have more freedom to say, you know what, that's great, but we really need the money for this or this. And they have the freedom to do that with your CFC contributions. So they really appreciate those CFC dollars that come in. The number to call for anybody who might run into difficulty with the pledging website is 800-797-0098. And I'm on page 42 of the slides here. That's 800-797-0098. This will be open business hours, Monday through Friday, through the last day of the solicitation period. So you shouldn't call us locally because we don't have access or insight into the pledge environment itself. If you have questions about campaigning or running a campaign, then I'm the person to call, or your local area CFC rep. Moving on to slide 43, we're going to show you some of the campaign materials that are available for you this year. This is, again, just really a subset. There's so much that's available, so I encourage you to contact me. I can provide a list of everything that's available, and you can request certain items. We'd love to provide you with whatever you need. But here's some of the things. The charity list is now final, so you can search for charities online. But because it wasn't finalized by OPM until just this past Sunday, we don't yet have the printed version. I am expecting the PDF to be emailed to me as early as today, because it's almost done. And we will be printing it just as fast as we can and getting those printed booklets out to you. So let us know how many copies you would like, and we'll get those to you as fast as we can. The pledge form, once again, is just a single sheet of paper. You can get it as a PDF right now and print it. We can also send you some pre-printed pledge forms. So that's another item for giving. A cause card is something that you can download from the website, or we can provide it for you. This is in conjunction with CFC Promotional Day, Show Some Love Day on November 2nd. And what we're encouraging people to do is take this card and write down what their cause is, you know, whether it's hunger or homelessness or the environment or animals or whatever it might be. We encourage them to write down their cause, and then you as a campaign manager can post these cause cards to a wall, which we would call the cause wall, and it sort of becomes your local billboard for the CFC, showing that people are participating and the different causes that you can support through the campaign. We'll have a picture of an example of that in just a moment. We have this thank you card on page 47 now that you can use. It's got our logo and says a thank you message on the back. And what we encourage you to do with this card is to take a Sharpie and sign your name and or add a little personal message to the donor. Some of our federal agencies like to take these thank you cards and have the agency head sign them in advance. Now, they wouldn't know the donor's name, and that's not something that should be provided to the agency head, but they can sign them in advance, and that can add a little extra personal meaning to this thank you. The barometer poster is, I alluded to before, but it's a way that you can track your agency campaign progress towards your goal. So you can, it's on the, and this is printed on the reverse side of every regular poster that we provide. So this next slide shows you some examples of the posters. We've printed a bunch of these already, and we can provide them to you with the barometer poster on the back. And there are others that if you wish to print on your own that we can provide you as well. We have a wealth of digital resources for you this year. We have infographics. We have pre-written email templates. We have stories from federal employees that can really help you make the campaign more personal and more meaningful. So we encourage you to use all of those tools that are at your disposal. Okay, we're going to shift gears here for a moment and talk about what I consider to be the most important part of the campaign process, and that is to make the ask, to invite your coworkers to make a contribution, whether it's a volunteer hours or whether it's money through the combined federal campaign. And we want to provide you with confidence in this process. So this really starts with being on slide 52 here, knowledgeable, that you're becoming more knowledgeable today. To be experienced, that's why we encourage you to make your own pledge and to help others along the way. And those two things will lead you to become more confident. And once that's in place, we recommend on slide 53 here, this process for making the ask. And it really starts with sharing your personal story. So I think that all of you, if you'll reflect, have a cause. You have something that you're passionate about in your life, something that means something personally to you. I can tell you that on a personal level, the CFC is very important to me, even as a non-federal employee, because as I had been fundraising in this environment for a couple of years, I came home from work one day to find that my 5-year-old son had just been diagnosed with type 1 diabetes. And we found ourselves at the local children's hospital for the next 3 days. And during that time, our lives were impacted by 3 different nonprofits. One of those was the hospital itself, which is a charity care hospital. It will not turn away any child for inability to pay or lack of insurance. But just having that resource there, that world-class Children's Hospital was such a blessing to us as we were learning about this disease and how to care for our son in this new chapter in our lives. Well, the second day we were there, a woman walked into our room, and it turned out she was from a diabetes-related organization, and she brought us a backpack, and inside the backpack was a teddy bear for my son, and there was a DVD and a coloring book. There were books on diabetes, information for us as parents, and that was provided to us free of charge. And she just said, "We want you to know that we're here for you on your new journey." And that meant a lot to us. And we've never forgotten that organization. That's one that we continue to support today. And then the third day we were there, we were visited in the room by a gentleman who was going from room to room with a sheepdog. And that gentleman happened to be from a Therapy Animals group, and they are also a nonprofit in the CFC. So all three of these organizations happen to be CFC nonprofits, which isn't surprising because most great local organizations participate in the CFC. And for 10 minutes, I got to watch as my little boy interacted with that sheepdog and forgot about the fact that he had been traumatized and was now being poked in the arm and in the leg and everywhere else imaginable with blood checks and insulin injections. Pretty traumatic thing for a 5-year-old boy, but he forgot all about that for 10 minutes. And I saw how meaningful it can be for animals to be used in that sort of environment. So that's my story, and I'm sharing it with you because I want you to know how important it is to me to be able to support these nonprofits, and what a wonderful thing you're doing in reaching out to others and encouraging them to give. So once you tell your story, you can explain some of those benefits of the CFC that we walked you through earlier in this presentation. And then we recommend that you engage the person by asking some questions. And that key magic question is, what are you passionate about? What's your cause? What do you care about? And as they answer those questions, you can help them to see that there are nonprofits in the CFC that address that. And then it's a simple invitation at that point. Would you be willing to make a contribution to something you're passionate about through a CFC, either a monetary contribution or volunteer time? Now, I'm not here to teach you how to be a hardcore salesman that twists arms. That is not what we're about. We're simply about making an invitation. And if the person says, no, thank you, that's perfectly okay. Maybe spend a little extra time finding out how they like to give, and then thank them for giving in that way. We have a lot of people out there who are giving back in wonderful other ways. And it's important to recognize them for doing that as well. And then you thank them for your time, and you can move on to your next contact. So that's the ask. And hopefully I've demystified it a little bit and made it seem a little less intimidating. Because again, we're not asking you to go out and be sneaky and used car salesman-y. We're asking you to simply invite people by opening up your heart a little bit, asking them to open up theirs, and then extending an invitation. And that's it. The next step in the process is to follow up. Sometimes people won't be at their desk. Sometimes they intend to give, but they forget. The day of the year when my phone usually rings the most is the day right after the campaign ends. And I'm getting a lot of calls from people who said, oh, I forgot. Is there any way I can still make my pledge? And that reminds me that if they had been reminded a little bit earlier, then we would have had yet another donor. Now, the last day to pledge online is January 12th. Sometimes we can still accept a paper pledge form after that date, but it's a little bit, the deadline's a little bit more strict now because it's one central location for the entire country that are receiving these pledge forms. So you can bet they're going to be inundated at the end of the campaign. So just to ensure that everybody's pledge counts, we really encourage you to get every donation in by January 12th and postmarked by that day and sent to the Central Campaign Administrator. Some more resources we have for you and following up with people are these pre-written campaign emails, which you can get from our website and directly from me or your local campaign representative to help you follow up. These are not intended to replace the ask. They don't replace the ask. They're just a supplement and a way to help you keep CFC in people's heads as you go throughout your campaign. Also, we have campaign cards and flyers, and we're also providing sticky notes this year that you can leave with people. It has our Show Some Love logo and our campaign website address. So those are, again, items that you can use for follow-up. And then finally, it's so important to thank and recognize everybody who participates in the campaign. So certainly give everyone a verbal thank you. We have provided those thank you cards for you, and we encourage you to use them and write a note on them. And then get creative in the way you thank people as well. So put up a banner, send a memo, bake a cake and bring it in. Whatever you can do to think of just to make sure people realize how much you appreciate them for their time and their contributions. Campaign events are a great way to add some spark to the campaign. Now, we know that a lot of the times in the past that these events were associated with extra fundraising activities, and since those are going away, you might be wondering, well, what can I do? There are still ways that you can engage people with charity fairs, with charity speakers, with activities for fun, just to lend awareness to the campaign. And once again, we have an event planning guide that we'd love to share with you. So contact us once we get it up to the website. I think I've talked about that fairly well, so I'm going to move on. When we talked about these promotional days already, we have these infographics to help you promote them. And this is an example of the cause wall. When you get that campaign card, you can ask people to write down the reasons why they give or the causes that are important to them, and build a cause wall and let that be your virtual, not virtual, but your physical billboard in your office for the CFC. So we've wrapped up the campaign process, and now we're going to talk about what your responsibilities are as the campaign wraps up. Again, recognizing success is very important. We do have some certificates that we can provide for you, certificate templates to help recognize people. And we've talked about already how you submit and process pledges, so I think we're good there. But it's also important for me to share with you some do's and don'ts with the campaign. So here on the left side of page 64, these are all the things that we've been encouraging you to do throughout this presentation to make sure that you're promoting voluntary giving, thanking and recognizing events and so forth. But it's also, there are also some things that from a regulatory standpoint that you cannot do. And they all have to be with this idea of coercion. As I said earlier, we are not here to try to teach you how to be coercive or manipulative. That is not the CFC way. But some of these things below this can be considered coercive or manipulative. So as you're going about the campaign, make sure that you're not favoring any particular charity or nonprofit. So you can certainly talk about causes, but you'll notice as I was sharing my story that I didn't give specific names of the organizations. I described them and told you what they did. You could probably narrow it down and maybe even figure out which ones they were. But I'm not promoting any particular nonprofit in my storytelling or sharing. You cannot create lists of non-donors or donors and share them with campaign leaders. You can certainly have your own lists that you will need for campaign purposes as far as follow-up goes, but your agency leadership is not to be provided with any lists of donors or non-donors. That's putting a little bit too much pressure on people. So avoid that. That's not something I've run into much in the past where people have done that. Just be aware that lists of non-donors are not, or donors are not to be shared beyond the campaign team. You can set a dollar goal for your agency, but of course you cannot specify how much an individual ought to give. So that's obviously a personal choice, and the regulations state that you cannot set a goal of 100% participation. Again, putting too much pressure on people who may not wish to participate. And then finally, I think we mentioned this, but we cannot host fundraising events or provide food, beverage, or entertainment using campaign funds. This would be pretty hard for you to do this year anyway, since you wouldn't have access to any cash for campaign funds. But that's against the regulations. So you can certainly ask people if they wish to donate, or if you want to have a potluck or something, and people voluntarily bring in food, beverage, or have a karaoke day or whatever. That's just fine, as everything associated with that is just donated. Now, one thing that I wasn't able to cover because I don't have all the details yet, you'll be asking yourself, how do I know if somebody has made an online pledge? If you go to the online pledge environment today, you'll probably notice as you set up your account that you have you'll be able to select your department. Let's say, for example, Department of Interior, and then you can select an agency under that department, for example, the Bureau of Land Management, but you won't yet see your agency specific office. Like I had a gentleman this morning who's with the Utah State BLM office, and he said he found the department, he found the BLM, but he couldn't find his particular office. And that's because the Office of Personnel Management, OPM, is still working on completing the full employer drop-down list for the pledging site. You may, knowing that, wish to wait a few days before encouraging people to give online. We do hope within the next few days that list will be much more robust and accurate. You can find your local agency. For those who've already pledged online, we encourage them to go back later, and when that information is there, find their specific agency and update their account, which then would associate their pledge with that particular agency. As of right now, there is no means provided for campaign coordinators or key workers to log into the website and see who has donated from their particular agency. The best information we've got up to now is that OPM will be providing reports to the LFCC, which will then be filtered down to campaign personnel, and we will share with you that contain reports about online giving for your agency. Those will not have information down to the donor level. It will be aggregated dollar amounts and participation, but it will not, at least not this year, it looks like, be releasing specific donor names. And I believe that a lot of that has to do with OPM's sensitivity in sharing PII, or personally identifiable information. So I'm sorry that's kind of bad news in terms of what you're used to getting reporting wise. We will do the very best we can to provide you those reports as soon as we get them, and make sure you get as much information as you can possibly have. And as I receive more information about how to access those reports and get that information, I will share it with you as fast as I receive it. That does bring me to the end of today's presentation. I do appreciate everybody's time. And for those that may have questions that I perhaps haven't answered as part of this, you can unmute yourself using *6 or unmute yourself otherwise. And what questions can I answer for you?
Hey, Bruce?
Yes.
So is there going to be the ability to access this through Employee Express for government employees still?
No. Employee Express is still there, but it is not there for CFC contributions anymore. So all online donations need to go through the new pledge portal.
Okay, thanks.
Other questions? All right. Well, I'll give it a moment. Again, thanks for coming today. If you don't have any questions, feel free to drop off and or email me afterward. My email is bruce.jacobs@mountainstatescfc.org. You can also contact me through the website. If anyone has a question that they still want answered, I'll be here for another minute